Welcome to the Mind Rebel podcast, where each episode is a guided exploration or conversation designed to move you forward toward clarity, truth, and the wisdom within you that knows the way. I'm Taryn Watts, founder of the Mind Rebel Academy, home of the revolutionary Mind Rebel method, where we guide people through deep personal transformation programs and also train and support world-class coaches. I'm joined here by my dear friend and co-host, Michelle Theriault. We hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to today's episode, where we'll be diving into another foundational aspect of the Mind Rebel method, the inner personas that we all carry, which we call the rebel mind, the guard, and the authentic self. So these parts live within each of us, whether we're aware of them or not. And in this conversation, we're going to explore who they are, how they show up in our lives, how to recognize them when one of these inner personas has taken the wheel of your life, and what it means to bring them into harmony with one another. So true alignment doesn't come from silencing or rejecting or turning our backs on these inner voices. It actually comes when the rebel mind, the guard, and the authentic self all walk side by side, each seen, each heard, each honored. These inner personas that are inside of all of us, they aren't here to be fixed or dismissed, because they carry really important information and really important wisdom. And when we learn how to connect to them, how to listen to them, to feel them fully, we begin the journey of integrating them back into the wholeness of who we are.
What I think is so powerful about these personas is it helps me look at myself, my thought processes, my feelings, my internal perspectives, reaction, everything that's happening in my inside world. It helps me look at myself with a lens of both honesty and compassion. There's something about the identifying of different personas that live inside of me that creates a little bit of distance between what is happening inside of me and who I am. And that is so powerful, because some of the really uncomfortable feelings or darker perspectives that might float through me in a moment, those are really, really easy to judge. And if I'm judging thoughts and feelings and pieces of me, and I'm thinking that's me, that can be a very painful experience that I don't want to wade into and explore and fully see. And there's something about this little bit of distance that these personas create that allows me to very honestly look at myself and not turn away from myself, because I know they're not the full picture of me. I know that if I'm having bad thoughts or bad feelings, I'm not bad. And it allows me to have curiosity, compassion, and therefore more honesty and ability to actually be with those parts of me and myself. And so really what these personas do is they increase my self-understanding, my self-knowledge, and my ability to be with myself exponentially, because they somehow make my insides less scary to me. So I'm willing to actually be with them. And I think any tool or framework that allows you to actually get closer to yourself, to see yourself more clearly, more compassionately, and therefore brings you so much more self-knowledge is so powerful. So I find these personas to be so powerful for these reasons.
Inside our personal development programs and coach training at the Mind Rebel Academy, we explore these personas in ways that are both deeply, deeply personal and really transformative. And in this episode, we're offering a really simple introductions, a way to begin recognizing and naming these parts so it's easy to place yourself within the framework. But the true magic and power of this work really, really lies within you. So while the method itself is intentionally designed to be very simple, your inner world is anything but simple. It's nuanced, it's layered, rich, and deeply complex. Not because the methodology itself is complicated, but because you, me, Michelle, all of us, we are beautifully complicated and complex inside. And so this is why we devote entire programs to exploring these personas in depth. There is something incredibly powerful that happens when you slow down enough to meet these parts of yourself with curiosity, with compassion, with care. And that's where the real breakthroughs begin. So if this episode sparks something in you, a resonance, a remembering, a question, or simply a sense that there's more for you to uncover, we invite you to explore deeper. The Mind Rebel Academy is where this work truly comes alive. And if this episode speaks to you, the most generous way to support our work is by liking, commenting, or subscribing to our YouTube channel. Those simple actions really help this work reach more people who resonate with it, just like you. So let's dive in. In a previous episode called The 3 Steps to Alignment, we introduced another foundational element of the Mind Rebel method. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, I highly recommend checking it out. It complements this episode really beautifully. In that episode, we also shared some free resources and tools, which I'll actually link in the show notes so that you have access to those. But they're designed to help you move from a place of feeling stuck or emotionally activated in some kind of negative emotion into a more grounded and aligned state. In this episode, we're going to explore the concept of these inner personas. We're going to start with the rebel mind and the guard, which we refer to as the false selves that we've created through our lives. The Mind Rebel method supports you in recognizing when one of these inner personas or one of these false selves has taken the lead, and it gently guides you back to a place of alignment inside what we call your most authentic self. So we're going to break this down in greater detail as we go. If you did watch the 3 Steps to Alignment episode, you may remember that we talked about this emotional spectrum, where on one side of the spectrum are belief systems that are rooted in love. And on the other side are belief systems rooted in fear, which is love's opposite. So across this spectrum are all the emotions and all the feelings you could possibly experience as a human being. So in this context, we use the terms feelings and emotions somewhat interchangeably, but for those of you who really love nuance, here's the differences between what the definition of an emotion is and the definition of a feeling is, and why we work on both of these levels. So emotions are the biological and physiological response to some kind of stimuli that's coming into your environment. They're instant, they're automatic, and they often arise in your body before your conscious mind can even catch up. These reactions originate in the body, and they're pure instinctive data about your internal state. Whereas feelings are the conscious interpretation of these emotions. So they involve thought, awareness, they involve meaning making. Feelings are shaped by your personal history, your social context, your belief systems. They are the stories that we tell ourselves about what our body is experiencing. So we just wanted to highlight this distinction because it mirrors why the Mind Rebel method works the way it does. We're not just tracking what you're thinking, we're tuning into how your body responds and what those responses might be trying to tell you. So emotions reveal something very raw and true, and feelings add depth and context and insight. And together they really form a much fuller picture of your internal world. And the more fluently you can tap into and read that landscape, the more skillfully you can navigate back into your own alignment again and again and again, no matter what life externally is bringing you. And here is something else to even consider. Doing this work over and over and over again builds your capacity to hold a greater emotional range, both on the negative side and on the positive side. So many of us have been conditioned to suppress or avoid certain emotions, especially really uncomfortable ones like anger, grief, even joy, because maybe they feel too big, they feel too unfamiliar. But part of what the Mind Rebel method teaches, and really is an approach to life, is how to expand your inner container so that you can stay present with more of your emotional truth without being overwhelmed or hijacked by it. The more capacity you build, the more freedom you feel, because you're no longer afraid of what might rise up. You know how to meet it, you know how to feel it, and move through it with grace. Again, this method offers an approach to life, a way to contextualize your inner landscape so that you can meet yourself more fully and begin to understand the forces that shape your thoughts, your behaviors, and your emotional responses. So, coming back to this emotional spectrum, the rebel mind lives on the fear side of that spectrum and is often associated with feelings like scarcity, lack, not enoughness, anxiety. Whereas the authentic self lives on the side of love and reflects states of peace, harmony, joy, deep connectedness. And the guard persona lives in between these two states and can shift along that emotional spectrum. So sometimes the guard is leaning closer to the rebel mind, and maybe that presents as controlling, defensive, aggressive. And other times it's inching closer to the authentic self. And maybe that presents as righteousness or maybe superiority or judgment. Everyone's rebel mind, guard, and authentic self will look and feel different. But the interesting thing is, beneath the differences of how they present in the world, the energetic signature of the rebel mind, the guard, are universal. So the rebel mind is rooted in some kind of fear. The authentic self is rooted in love. And the guard is rooted in a need to protect or prove something. And so those at the very base, those are the energetic signatures of our three personas. And then how we filter those through our psyche, our lived experiences, our emotions, beliefs, all those things, they can present very differently. Again, because your inner world is so rich and nuanced, how you experience these personas will be really unique to you. I experience mine differently than Michelle does, and you will too. So that's what makes this work really deep and really powerful. It's not about a one-size-fits-all label. It's about learning how to recognize these energies in your own body, in your own patterns, in your own life. Personally, I work with my personas on a daily basis. I am still uncovering, after all these years, I'm still uncovering new layers, new edges, noticing the subtle ways they show up, sometimes really disguised, especially in the guard energy, and sometimes very loud, very fearful. And other times they're showing up in very, very loud and obvious ways. So this is lifelong work. And when we say work, we don't mean like efforting and fixing ourselves. We actually mean like a sacred kind of inner devotion to yourself. This willingness to turn inward with honesty, with compassion, with curiosity for ourselves. It's this ongoing practice of returning to ourselves again and again and again with love. So again, while this episode gives you this foundational introduction, the true transformation lies in how deeply you choose to go with them and how honestly you're willing to meet yourself along the way.
As we start diving into and exploring the different personas, you might notice that some are immediately easy to identify within yourself, and others can feel a little more elusive. I remember the very first time, Taryn, that you took me through this work in a workshop. I remember my authentic self was so clear. I could see her. I could feel her. I could feel her energy in my body. I could see what she was doing. She was so clear. And my rebel mind was an absolute mystery. Even though you explained the concept so well, I knew she was all about fear and lack. And still, I found her so hard to connect to. And what I notice right now is in my everyday life, the easiest energy for me to always spot and feel is my guard. So it's okay if, as we're going through and explaining the personas, some might feel clearer to you. You might be able to see those parts of you more clearly. And others might take a little more time and peeling away of layers to really put your finger on. And that's okay. Even just, from that very first time, the very first day I explored these concepts, even without a full, rich picture, not even close to the fullness of the picture I have of my personas now, that was the starting place that I was able to keep building and building and building on. And just that little bit of awareness is so helpful. So whatever amount of awareness, whatever bit of clarity you can get is still so valuable. Don't worry if the entire picture isn't crystal clear right away.
Let's start exploring the rebel mind. This rebel mind is this false self within us that is connected to belief systems of fear inside of us. It's when we feel a sense of lack, scarcity, not enoughness. Really, again, feelings and emotions that are associated when we are inside the perspectives of these limiting beliefs rooted in fear. So for a lot of people we take through this work, myself included, the rebel mind is a younger, more vulnerable version of you. Not for everyone. I've seen all sorts of rebel mind characters, and whether it's a Disney character, a character in a movie, an object. I mean, it can be absolutely anything. There's no right or wrong. It could be multiple characters. You can have multiple personas within. But Michelle and I will speak to our rebel minds and give our rebel mind some context and some life, just in case that's helpful to you. My rebel mind is my 4-year-old self, and she is terrified, scared, really worried that something bad is about to happen. When I'm in the perspective of my rebel mind, I actually imagine it like when I'm in my rebel mind, I feel it in all sorts of feelings in my body. It's like my 4-year-old self has taken the reins, taken the wheel, and I am seeing the world through her eyes. I am perceiving the events around me through her very fearful eyes, massively illogical eyes, right? So I'm perceiving the world through her eyes and making meaning of what's happening around me through her lens. And that's creating all sorts of emotions in my body, like not feeling safe, not feeling enough, feeling like I want to hide. So that's the energy that really captures the essence of my rebel mind. Michelle, do you want to speak to your rebel mind?
So my rebel mind, I've recently gone back and re-examined my rebel mind. And now the name that I've given her is the Scarcity Oracle. And the reason that's the name I've given her is she is that version of me. She is that part of me that has experienced so many disappointments throughout my life, so many letdowns, so many unfairnesses or sadnesses, bits of grief. And she's the part of me that's never fully let any of that pain or disappointment fully go. It's what she knows. It's like every bad thing that's ever happened to me in my life, there's a part of me that's held on to that, I think, and internalized it. And she likes to predict the future from all that data that she knows. So the millions of disappointments that she's experienced, she didn't make them up. They were real. The feelings were real. The unfairness was real. The disappointment was real. She's never fully let that go. And she predicts into the future from all of those past experiences. And she very much expects disappointment. And not because she's crazy, not because she's seeing things like wildly, like in a wildly distorted way, just simply from her real lived experience, she expects more of that in the future. So she just sees scarcity. She sees all the disappointments coming from a mile away, and she knows they're going to land in her life again. And that's the lens she has of the world. And so it's like the definition of lack and fear and scarcity, always, always predicting the worst. And she lives with this assumption that better is never really coming. That is my rebel mind.
You know, it's interesting. As I was talking about my rebel mind hates to be talked about. She really doesn't like to be talked about. So even when I talk about her, and I talk about her quite a bit publicly because it's a teaching tool. She's a teaching tool as well to say, like, this is what it could look like. This is what it looks like for me. She hates being talked about and being exposed. It's like when I shine a spotlight on her and like share her like deep dark fears, and she's like, she does not like that at all. But it's interesting because when I hear you share about your rebel mind, I'm like, oh, I have so much compassion for your sweet little rebel mind and the part of you that has been let down, and makes sense why your rebel mind is the way she is and has developed the beliefs that she's developed, right? It's fascinating when I hear about other people's rebel minds and have so much compassion for their rebel minds. It's more challenging to like put that compassion back on myself, back on my own rebel mind, because a lot of my rebel mind's fears are really gigantic, world-ending type fears. Like logically, I can say, could that really happen? Could that really happen? And then what? You know, I can talk myself out of it, and I can shush, dismiss. These are the fears of a very, very scared 4-year-old. This doesn't make any sense, but they're very, 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 very real for my rebel mind. And they're very, very real inside of my body when my rebel mind is activated and driving the bus of my life. And what happens is when my rebel mind's activated and seeing the world through this very fearful lens, events around me, you know, as I move through the world, events around me are happening. But the way I'm interpreting those events are very, very distorted. And I'm interpreting a message I receive, an email I receive, feedback I get, a conversation I have. I am filtering all of that external data through the lens of I'm not enough, through the lens of something bad's about to happen, through the lens of whatever big beliefs are being activated inside of me. What that does is it has me showing up in the world in a particular way. It has me showing up in the world in a fearful state. And what that does, again, to take it a step further, is when our rebel minds or guards are, and we'll talk about guards in a minute because they're a little trickier. But when our rebel minds are driving the bus and we are interpreting the world through a rebel mind's lens, not only are we feeling emotions inside of our body, not only are beliefs activated inside of our minds, but we are making decisions and choices and actions from the seat of our rebel mind and not from the seat of our most authentic selves, which comes from a place of clarity and strength. And we'll get into that in a little bit. And that has ripple effects. You know, that has ripple effects on the choices you make in your life, the decisions you take, the way you interact with people, the way you communicate, the things you say yes to, the things you say no to. It has all these ripple effects. And when my rebel mind is driving the bus of my life and in charge of decisions, we're not going in great directions. Like we're not going the direction that I really want to go. This is more than just like a method. It really is an approach to life. It's an approach to meet myself. But what this approach has given me is I can recognize when my rebel mind, when my 4-year-old self, she has a name. She didn't want to say the name earlier, but she has a name. Her name is TT. My nickname growing up was TT, and it stood for Terrific Taryn, because my parents and my aunts and uncles thought I was just absolutely terrific and just such a really good little child. It actually stands for Terrified Taryn, because that's really what was my internal state. I was so sensitive growing up. I was terrified of so many things growing up. And so when I feel that energy inside of my body and that energetic signature of my rebel mind, that now I'm so attuned to those feelings inside of when she's activated, rather than making choices, decisions, actions in my world from that seat, I have tools now to turn inward, to look at my 4-year-old rebel mind, to ask her, what's going on inside? What do you feel? This is how it links really beautifully to that previous podcast episode we were talking about, the 3 steps to alignment, because we can use these personas as a way to really name what it is we feel inside. They're a doorway to our feelings. And when I can look at my rebel mind and say, what do you feel right now? And she can look at me and say, I feel scared. I feel terrified that something bad's going to happen. I feel like I messed up or I haven't done enough or whatever it might be. That naming is a really powerful process to like get out of the anxiety or overwhelm or whatever it is that you feel in your mind and your body and get into the true heart of the feelings and the emotions that are going on inside, and giving that a name and allowing my rebel mind to feel all the fear and feel all the emotions. You know, for so many years of my life, my rebel mind operated on autopilot. I didn't know I had a rebel mind. I just thought, you know, this was an internal state and this was who I am. For many, many years, my rebel mind made choices, made decisions. This like constant pangs of anxiety were just how I lived. And applying this framework to my life and getting to know my rebel mind deeper and more intimate ways has allowed me to dream bigger from my life than I ever thought possible. Because I can now recognize she will always be there. I'm not sure I will ever get rid of this part of myself. But nurturing her, recognizing her, bringing her back home into alignment with the other parts of myself has allowed me to dream so big and expansively for my life. And as I do this work over and over, years and years and years and years, my dreams are big and beautiful and bold. I've got just the most delicious dreams for my life. And it's not like she's ever going away. Once I had a student ask in class, you know, as you do this more and more and more, does your rebel mind ever just eventually leave? And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, not in my experience anyway. Maybe in other people's experiences, but not in mine. But what it does do is that the more I work with her, the more attuned I become to when she's suddenly like slowly activated or suddenly shifting out of alignment. Whereas before it would be like undercurrents of anxiety building slowly over time. And now it's like these great big red flags are going off in my body the second she starts to get activated, so that I can turn to her sooner. And I can spend more and more minutes of my day making choices and decisions in a state of alignment rather than she's the one driving the bus.
So I know you describe what your rebel mind feels and what it feels like inside your body when she's really activated in the anxiety. Could you give an example of what it looks like for her to actually be in the driver's seat and be the one operating? Like, what would she actually be doing? What would that actually look like if she had the reins in your life?
I can give you the most recent example. So today we're recording this on Thursday. We're recording this on a Thursday. And on Monday of this week, she had quite the breakdown on Monday of this week. Just a little context. We've got such big, beautiful dreams for the MRA and for our lives. And together, Michelle, we're really like moving towards those dreams. And we've been in a season of very, very busy building our dreams. And somewhere along the way over the last couple weeks of busyness, my rebel mind was starting to get a little bit activated inside, a little bit fearful of like, she's like, well, these are some big dreams. And the steps forward that we're taking, wow, you're like really putting yourself out there. You're really exposed and vulnerable. She hates to be exposed. If she could be hidden from the world forever and ever and ever, and cocoon herself only with the comforts of the people she loves most in the world, and just like be in a big blanket with tea all day, like that would be her happy place. But I've been working with her to take these brave steps forward and putting ourselves out there, putting our work out there in more and more brave ways and more courageous ways. And she's been on board, and I've been like given her the attention she needs. But I think on Monday, I reached a little bit of a breaking point, and it actually manifested in my neck and my shoulders. And I woke up on Monday morning and I happened to have a massage that morning. So I woke up on Monday morning and I could not move my neck, couldn't move my neck. And I was like, oh, thank God I have a massage booked. I can work some of this tension. I don't know what's going on in here. And as my massage therapist was like, she had her like elbows in my neck and underneath my shoulder blades and like stripping the tension away, I started uncontrollably crying. It was like something was releasing and I was tapping into my rebel mind's true, like what's been like bubbling to the surface and what really wanted to be felt and heard. And she was just like, I am terrified. I am scared. She's not in a good way right now. And so for the entire rest of the day, so I had a choice to make after that massage. I could have just like mustered on, okay, I've got so much on my to-do list. It's actually wild. I got to keep going. But if I kept going, I would be moving through the world again through her activated lens. And what that looks like is I'm on edge. I get anxious even reading emails. Like, is someone going to say something bad? Did I forget something over here? Like, it's almost like this buzzing, chaotic, fearful energy that if you were with me and looking at me, you probably couldn't tell that there was something going on. But inside of me is a very different story happening. It's like I'm shallow breathing. I'm tense. I mean, that's where everything just tenses right up and I'm carrying it here and I'm scanning my environment for danger, right? Like danger over here. Is everyone happy? Did I forget something over here? Oh, this student is missing something. Oh my gosh, why is that person missing something? Like it's almost this chaotic, stressed out energy. I had the option. Do that. Continue on with my to-do list, or give her what she really, 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 really needs. And what she really needed that day was to close her computer, put a heating pad on her neck, get her cup of chamomile tea, get under the weighted blankets, and binge watch a show. And oh my God, did I ever binge watch the best show? I watched Dying for Sex. Have you seen that?
No, but you told me about it.
I did tell you.
I haven't seen it.
Phenomenal show. I laughed, I cried, I bawled my eyes out. It was exactly what my rebel mind needed. And then the next day I woke up feeling better, like feeling tender, literally, physically and emotionally, but feeling better. So again, it's not like she goes away. Like no matter how much work I do on myself. And again, the word work feels like this is hard work. This is just more like devotion to my internal world. That's really what I mean by the word work. And so the more devoted I am to myself, it's not like she's going away, but she's just like a really big part of me. And I'm just getting better and better. Sometimes I miss it, but like attuning to her and recognizing when she's shifting out of alignment, recognizing when she's starting to get activated inside of me and starting to, really what happened there was she was like slowly activated inside of me. And every day I would kind of touch her and like, check in with her and she'd come back. But then it was like more. And these steps I was taking were really, really brave until like all that tension just like, it's like she sat on my neck and in my shoulders and she was like, oh, you're going to listen to me today. Okay. No choice. I need some love. I need some attention. I need you to hear me. This is too much right now. All this exposure, all of this brave steps we're taking in the name of this vision, it's too much right now. And that was my invitation to like give her exactly what she needed that day.
The way you turned toward your rebel mind, the way you took care of your rebel mind and honored your rebel mind, that type of integration with your rebel mind is the way you always describe the personas. And yet I can remember intellectually knowing that my rebel mind isn't bad. She's a piece of me and I'm going to listen to her. I'm going to feel her. I'm going to, understand her intellectually. You described that to me really well. I knew that. And yet still I found a huge part of me feeling like I was failing when I was really experiencing my rebel mind. I think once I got a taste for the energy of my authentic self, I know I'm skipping ahead on the personas, but once I started getting a taste of the internal states that were possible for me, and especially also when I started practicing the 3 steps to alignment, name it, feel it, shift it, and would have these moments of working through the heavier emotions and having a breakthrough into these beautiful emotions, I just wanted more of that. And it felt so good that I associated that with like succeeding or something, like succeeding or being good or doing this right. And when I couldn't shake my rebel mind off me somehow, I felt like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I'm not doing this properly, but I'm not seeing right. And I found it very, very challenging to learn to truly embrace her. I spoke words about embracing my rebel mind. I said really good words about it. Even to students, I think I had moments where I was explaining personas to students while still really wrestling to embody truly embracing those parts of me myself. The question from a student you mentioned of, eventually will the rebel mind go away? I think I sort of believed that if I leaned in and did enough work, she would go away and I would just be left with only my authentic self. The way you're describing, turning towards, caring for, honoring your rebel mind, it's that type of softness and openness and embracing and accepting of those parts of you. That's the work. It's not the scrambly work to be better and shed whatever is unpleasant or inconvenient. It really is the openness, the softening to a piece of you in the way that you would for an innocent little child that you loved. The care you would give your own little baby, your own little innocent child, your own little puppy, the way you would embrace them. Truly, that's the work with your rebel mind, is like, how do I learn to give this piece of me this amount of love and compassion and curiosity and space to exist? Really just space to be and be heard and be seen.
I remember having this breakthrough with my rebel mind when my daughter was 4. This is many years ago. She's 10 today. But when my daughter was 4, I remember this experience of her crying about something totally, irrational, illogical. And I just remember holding her and just holding her and rocking her and holding her and having this realization that this is exactly how I need to care for my 4-year-old. And since then, I use that sometimes as a visualization tool to connect to my rebel mind when I'm not feeling super patient with her or annoyed with the feelings she's feeling or feel like I don't have time for her. It's like if my daughter were to walk in the middle of my to-do list in the midst of the biggest fear, and even if it was ridiculous and irrational, what would I do? Would I keep working and tell her to shush and I'll be there later? Or would I turn to her and embrace her and nothing else in the whole world matters in that moment and rock her and give her what she needs? If I would do that so effortlessly for her and my son, of course, both my children, if I were to do that so effortlessly for them, that is the level of love and care I need to give myself. And so sometimes I use that as a reminder. If this was Shay, if this was Cooper, what would I be doing? And so okay, imagine, visualize my 4-year-old self. What does she need? That's true self-love. That's pretty profound, true self-love in action.
When we talk about the spectrum between love and fear, both in terms of, where the personas fall on that spectrum and emotions and 3 steps to alignment. One thing that used to mess me up a teeny little bit was the word love, because my brain had an idea of what love meant. And to my brain, love meant loving others That's the little coloring my brain put on that word. And what's been really important for me in properly understanding this spectrum and properly understanding my personas is what that word love really means to me is self-love. And that's the frame of reference that I most need to use. If I'm ever in a moment where I'm trying to contemplate what is a belief system that's anchored in love, what is an action that is, anchored in love, what would my authentic self who is anchored in love do? I always make sure to anchor my mind into what is self-loving. That, for me, is a really important piece of all of this. When I think about my authentic self, or when I am trying to feel into her energy and feel into what would she do right now? What perspective does she see right now? It always works so much better for me when I really remember this is first and foremost for me about self-love instead of being this loving, giving person who loves others and does these things that look like love. And when I do connect to that self-love, it's so funny that so naturally and so fully that means so lovingly tending to my rebel mind and not pushing her away. Because you know what? Of course, self-love is embracing this little part of me over here, no matter how inconvenient she is. And I also find for me that feels really good because alignment and authentic self and love and growth doesn't mean something that necessarily looks great on the outside to others. It doesn't mean any particular moral, spiritual ideal. It just means what is self-honoring and self-loving for me.
Let's talk about authentic self. We're swinging from rebel mind, rooted in the energetic signature of fear, belief systems of fear, lack, scarcity, whatever it may be. And we're going to shift the pendulum all the way over to the other side, which is the authentic self connected to belief systems of love. And of course, we don't mean external love. We mean true self, internal, honoring love, harmony, balance within yourself. That often just absolutely naturally what radiates out of you is love towards others and the world and whatever else. If either of those words, fear and love, don't resonate with you, feel free to put your own words there. Feel free to make this your own. But we're going to use the word love here to really capture the energy of that self-love. So the authentic self, we create personas for the authentic self as well. We create a persona that represents this part of us when we are whole and at home inside of ourselves, when we are, fully integrated. We call that aligned, right? Mind, body, soul in alignment. And only you know what that feels like inside of me. The way I describe it inside of me is I feel a sense of inner harmony inside of myself. And that doesn't necessarily mean I'm always feeling completely ecstatic and joyful in my authentic self. But it means that when I tap into what I really feel, there's a sense of wholeness and inner strength, like a strong, sturdy foundation that I'm connected to inside of myself. And that has me showing up in the world in particular ways, right? When we are inside our most authentic selves, the way I like to see it is that we are filtering the world through a clear and untainted lens, as untainted as humans can possibly see the world through, because of course we're never perfect. But if I'm in my rebel mind, I'm seeing the world through the limiting beliefs that are activated inside of my rebel mind. Whereas when I'm in my authentic self, my view of the world broadens. I can see clearly. I have a broader perspective for what's going on around me. So when external situations, events are happening, that's the way I'm filtering it through my lens. And I'm able to respond in a much more grounded and aligned way, even when shit is hitting the fan. the way that we're able to process the information, the way that we're able to hold ourselves and show up in the world is very, very, very different than when we're in our rebel minds and guards. We're going to talk about the sneaky guard in a couple minutes here. So creating a persona for that version of yourself is also a really powerful tool because, like you said, Michelle, we can call on that persona. We can activate that persona. And really, the more we know that version of ourselves, the more we can call on that version of ourselves and like embody that version of ourselves. So when my rebel mind is needing tending to, it's my authentic self that's stepping forward and saying, like, come, like, come here. Let me take care of you. Let me nurture you. Let me rock you and give you what you need. When we do that, we have this internal feeling and this internal sense of coming home to ourselves, of alignment. And that's what true alignment is. Our personas are walking side by side in harmony with one another, balanced together in harmony. And so creating that persona for yourself helps in that way as well. So the persona I've created, it's a version of me, and I can see what she's wearing. I can see how she styles her hair, which is not styled at all. But anyways, I can see how she moves through the world with such grace, with such confidence, slowly, like presently. She's a whole vibe and a whole energy that when I'm embodying my authentic self, like even talking about her now, just like talking about my rebel mind, like I can feel that energy. Even talking about my authentic self, like my shoulders want to lean back. I feel her energy kind of like rising through me. It's an energy we can call on and we can embody when we get to know her. And I know that when I'm in my authentic self, I am seeing the world clearly. I want to make decisions and choices and actions from this state, not from my activated, triggered rebel mind state. I want to dream for my life from this state because from this state, the world is my oyster. Like anything is possible. From this state, I can actually tap into the deepest desires and dreams that I hold, not the dreams of my guard or the dreams of my rebel mind, which can get really confusing at times. I cannot tell you how many students of our programs have told us that the first time they ever visioned or created a life vision or even like a vision board, they created that from their guard or from their rebel mind. It was not the true yearnings of their authentic self. And that can be very confusing to untangle. In our programs, before we even talk about visioning work, we're doing this untangling work first. We're identifying who's your rebel mind, who's your authentic self, and who's your guard, so that you can self-identify who's driving the bus. And then only when you can start to even access little parts of your authentic self, then the windows into your true desires and your true dreams truly open up. And my goal is not to spend every waking second in alignment with my authentic self. My goal is to spend more and more minutes of my day here. And the only way I can do that is if I am attuned to these other forces inside of me and nurturing and taking care of these other forces inside of me, because I'm not going anywhere. I can vision all I want and I can have all these beautiful goals and beautiful dreams and I can be running, racing towards them. But I am not making any meaningful and impactful progress if my rebel mind and my guard aren't coming along with me. That's this whole beautiful journey that the Mind Rebel method represents. But your authentic self is such an important piece of this. Michelle, do you want to talk a little bit about your authentic self and her energy?
Yeah. First, I just want to say, if you try to create an idealized version of yourself from your mind that you think, oh, if I could just be like that, I would be so good and so happy, you're probably describing your guard, not your authentic self. Your authentic self isn't the version of you that sounds super good in your mind, although my authentic self also does sound good to my mind because now that I know how good she feels. But the qualities of your authentic self are not the qualities that you wish you had or you think you'd be better if you had. Your authentic self is that version of you when you actually feel your deepest sense of wholeness, power, alignment, truth. your authentic self has to feel real and true in your body. It's almost like it's those feelings that alert you to the fact that, oh, your authentic self is here. You're glimpsing or touching a piece of your authentic self's perspective. I remember students in the past wrestling a little bit with the authentic self because I think wisely they had the sense that like they didn't want to create just an idealized version of themselves and try to be better and try to become her. But sometimes there's a little bit of misunderstanding about what she really represents, or he, she, it, your authentic self could be an animal, whatever. But the purpose and the power, I think, of having this authentic self persona isn't so we have something to aspire to and keep improving towards. The power of this persona, I'll speak for myself, for me, is all of the moments when I lose my center and I get lost in the storm of emotions or fears. My authentic self is this like set point that I can internally feel my way back to, where I can, I guess, remember my wholeness. For me, my authentic self isn't someone I want to improve towards. My authentic self is the version of me who really remembers how beautiful I am right now, how wonderful I am right now. My authentic self is the version of me who sees everything wonderful about me and is so compassionate towards all of my struggles and all of my flaws. That means that you have access to your authentic self in every single moment. You don't have to earn your authentic self. You don't have to strive towards your authentic self. Your authentic self is really always a version of you that does exist right now. And it's the version of you that feels the very, very, very best to be connected to.
It's the version of you that's effortless. It's the version of you that is fully, truly, wholly yourself. And it is actually fascinating why that is so hard for so many of us to remember and access. It really is fascinating. And this process of first understanding who you are not, even though these are parts of you, your guard and your rebel mind, and certainly may have been at the steering wheel of your life for many, many, many years, especially the guard, which we'll talk about in a second. But those are our false selves. They really are. Those are false selves that we've created for one reason or another, and maybe even served a really important purpose in actual safety and survival at some points of our lives. But those versions of you aren't who you really are. The version of you who you really are is like beneath those layers. If you strip down everything, if you laid down all of the false selves that you have created and all the ideals of who you thought you ought to be and who the world wanted you to be, who you wanted you to be, and you are just like, all of that is stripped away. There's nothing left. That's your authentic self. I always say that my authentic self feels extraordinary and ordinary. Extraordinary because when someone touches the essence of their authentic self, they are extraordinary, but they're also wildly ordinary. I love that duality of the authentic self. I think it's really special and it names it beautifully, but that's what we want to come back to.
Like I said earlier, there was a part of my authentic self that I could just see and feel and touch right away. She just appeared in my mind. I could see her in a beautiful flowing dress outside in nature. There's trees around, flowers around, and she's wandering around like there's no clocks, no calendars, no schedules, definitely no Zoom calls or emails. She's just wandering out there. And that was a piece I could just touch right away. And she remains. So that inspiration that just dropped in out of nowhere, that's still so true. Such a piece of her. And the other things I've been learning about my authentic self and myself as time goes by are that one of her maybe most essential qualities and desires is freedom. That is a piece of her energetic signature where she remembers, oh, I'm free. And it's not about the external things that make me feel like I do have freedom or don't have freedom. It's really her remembering of her own power, her remembering of her own freedom. Her mental state is in this place of, oh yeah, wait a minute. I'm the boss of myself and I'm the boss of my life. And no matter what's happening, I get to choose. Even if it's a hard choice, I am really the boss of myself and my life and I'm free. That's one of her main perspectives that she remembers always. And one thing I had to do, I was one of those people that for a little while had to change the word love to something else, just because, like I said, I had weird associations with the word love. One thing that my rebel mind actually did, my rebel mind doesn't really feel worthy. Because she didn't feel worthy, she was always trying to earn her worthiness. And one way that I'm speaking past tense as if she doesn't do this anymore, but like she sneaks in. So one way my rebel mind still tries to like earn her worth is by giving to others in actions that look very loving, but really they come from a place of like very deep unconscious fear. And so for me, I really needed to like disconnect this association I had with like looking like I was being loving to others or the world. I had to really anchor into something entirely different. And for a while, I used the word truth because that gave me this permission to, find what was self-loving, self-honoring, what I would choose in my own freedom, like what was really true, even if it didn't on the surface look loving, to other people. My authentic self, a really important piece of her is that she wants the thing that is deeply true and deeply self-honoring, even if it doesn't look that way to others. It's really important to her to choose what feels like truth and self-love on the inside and just express this freedom. And not with any sort of lack of care for others, not wanting to harm anyone else. My authentic self has a deep trust that if I honor myself first, choose myself first, and express my freedom, that ultimately it is the kindest, most loving thing for others, even if for some reason someone's mad at me or doesn't look loving. That's what she chooses. That's what her North Star is. Now I know the word love as self-love. I have the spectrum from love to fear, but for a while I found that really, really helpful.
Tell us about the actual persona you've created for her.
She's had multiple names. Once I named her Layla because I just really liked the name Layla. Then her name became the Fairy Queen of the Wildest Garden. But most recently, I'm calling her She Who Moves with the Moon. I still love all the names. I don't know, maybe she's a blend of all of them. But I really see her as the most wild, natural, magical little fairy queen who is so connected to Mother Nature and the cycles of Mother Nature. And she is so free to connect to her own natural instinctive rhythms. It's like the ultimate rebellion against the created structures of the world that don't resonate with my soul. She has found the inner permission to move in her own rhythms and her own cycles that are a mirror of Mother Nature and the cycles of the moon. And she's found a way to give herself that permission and that sovereignty to move that way, even though that permission isn't reflected in the world around her. And that is really the source of her deepest power, is this remembering that she doesn't need permission from anybody else. No one else has to agree. The structures of the world, society, government, common, regular opinion doesn't matter. She's not concerned about changing those things or proving it to others. She just knows she gets to be free and do whatever she wants. And the Fairy Queen of the Wildest Garden and She Who Moves with the Moon, I almost imagine her in her own little realm where she knows she can create her own universe. like in a fairy tale. Do you want to describe what embodying the love end of the spectrum really looks like for your authentic self?
It's a funny thing to talk about, isn't it? Because it's almost hard. I can feel it, I can see it, but it's hard to verbalize it, to put it into words. It's almost like the moment you put words around it, you constrict it. But what it feels like is a sense of such groundedness in my body. I always imagine my authentic self is barefoot. She's always outside in the forest and she's barefoot. She's so deeply rooted to this earth. She's always wearing this really non-constrictive, flowy dress, and her hair is down, and she's got no makeup on her face. There's no efforting. She's completely herself, completely natural. And she's looking around the world in almost this like childlike wonder. You know how you said you're very familiar with your authentic self's like energetic imprint and emotions that she feels. Mine are these feelings of like awe and wonder, but in almost this like childlike way of like, look at this beautiful tree and like the miracle that is this tree. Look at these roots and how they're like connected to this other tree system. And look at these beautiful animals or these birds singing. It's just like, life is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And she sees this harmony and balance all around her, even in storms, even when a tornado's ripping through and messing shit up, like she sees this like big picture. Sometimes she has to pull way back to see the bigger picture, but she's always able to connect to some kind of harmony and balance. And she's so steady and curious and doesn't need to be the center of attention ever, doesn't need to be on the stage ever, but she is a leader. But she's like this really quiet, steady leader. So when I picture her, she's just in the elements of nature. She's doing the simplest things. She's incredibly present. She's here right now, not thinking about the future, not thinking about the past. And she's just got this joy radiating inside of her that naturally extends to others. So she has this very nurturing and motherly quality about her. And so she's like an incredibly loving force. In fact, when I connect to my authentic self, I think she loves the whole wide world. Like, I think she's just like could love every human and every animal and every creature and every tree. And I've never had any negative connotations with the feeling of love. And so love has always been a very pure word for me. And when I'm connected to my authentic self, I just feel this incredible oneness with the world. And that love just like, it feels like it could just wrap the whole world up. And that's what it feels like. Again, words sometimes like don't do the feelings or the imagery that I have justice, but that's the best way I can describe her. Discovering who that version of me is actually took a lot of years and a lot of peeling back of layers to get to when I tap into her today. I'm like, oh, that is her. There is nothing else. That is her. But over the years of doing this work, I remember times where I thought my authentic self was a really successful businesswoman. And she was on stages and speaking so eloquently and so like convincingly and so, intelligently. And she was an author of books and like those visions of my authentic self. It's not like they felt really off, I remember even like daydreaming about that version of me. And whenever I would see like this really powerful woman, just like owning a room or owning a stage or like doing incredible things with her business, I was like, oh, I want to be like that. It was like an idealized version of myself. And I think for several years in business, I tried to like call on that version of myself. I tried to like call her forward. And I tried that on like here and there in my own way until I really realized that's actually not my authentic self. I do run a successful business. I do one day want to write a book. I do maybe one day want to speak on stages. Maybe. Not sure about that one yet. However, the energy behind it is very different. I recognized that idealized version of myself that I was fantasizing about, that was actually coming from my guard for many years. And what my guard thought was like success and what my guard wanted and the qualities that my guard was drawn to in others and other powerful women and like what she thought success and joy and happiness looked like. And so let's like transition here into the guard, because of all the personas, the guard can be the trickiest. And I think that truly, although I have no hard evidence or done no hard research on this, I think 99% of the world is walking around in their guard energy, not knowing they're in their guard energy. In fact, I think a lot of people in their guard energy actually, truly, convictedly believe that their guard is actually their authentic self. And I can't tell you how many students who have sat with themselves in this work and unraveled the pieces of themselves and have realized that who they thought their authentic self was actually their guard. And there can be this reckoning inside and this wrestling inside with that, because if you thought the most authentic version of you was actually a false version of you that you created over the years. And not only did you think that, but perhaps you were celebrated for it, or you were promoted because of it, or you were revered or feared, or you were an exceptional leader because of it. That is like, talk about an identity crisis, like that can be really challenging to sit with and very tender. And we've seen it time and time again with our students that we support, right? When they realize that, and they unravel that and they slowly start to let that go, that only then can you truly meet the authentic self inside of you. Only then, when the guard releases their grip. So the guard lives in between these two states of your rebel mind and your authentic self. And it can vacillate. That version of you, or versions of you, if you have multiple guards, can vacillate between these two states, sometimes operating closer to the rebel mind. And if you think about that, if you think about who your rebel mind is and who your authentic self is, when your guard is closer to your rebel mind, your guard is protecting the most raw and vulnerable version of you that needs protecting. So when my guard is closer to my 4-year-old self, who's just absolutely terrified that something bad's about to happen. My guard, who her persona is Brienne of Tarth from Game of Thrones. If you haven't seen Game of Thrones, she's got full body armor and a sword, and she is the strongest woman on the face of the planet. I'm pretty sure she can do anything. She's headstrong, physically strong. Whoever she's in devotion to, she'll do absolutely anything. Absolutely anything. So when she's in devotion to my rebel mind and she sees how vulnerable and scared my little rebel mind is of the world, she is like on guard. And she moves into this like hyper productive state of ensuring safety everywhere, of ensuring everything is done, everything is neat and tidy, scanning the environment for any danger. Okay, and then fix it. She works and works and works and works and then works some more and works and works and works. And then the tension in my neck builds and my body builds, right? But when she's closer to my authentic self side, she's like touching the energy of my authentic self, but she's like more in the energy of, I got to protect this like beautiful version of myself. And so the way that can show up is, it can show up a little fierce, like if someone's like attacking that version of my truest self, or if I feel criticism, I don't know, she can like build walls, shut you out fast. She can like be judgmental, a little bit superior. So it's like very different energy than when she's protecting my rebel mind. But she just floats around these two states and she presents in very different ways. However, again, beneath all the ways she presents, the energetic signature of a guard is universal. And that is, there's something to prove or there's something to protect. And however that manifests outwardly is incredibly unique based on who you are. That's my guard. Michelle, you want to talk a little bit about yours?
Yes. Even though I am really good at feeling the difference between my rebel mind, my guard, my authentic self, when I tune in, I'm able to discern very quickly whose energy is, predominantly in me at that moment. And even with that knowledge, I would say that the vast majority of the time, I'm living in my guard. I think that my guard is my default mode to navigating life when I'm not really conscious. And she's my most common default, especially when I'm around other people. I think when I'm entirely alone, it's a little bit different. But I think it makes sense that my default is to be in a protective state. Like I think about my poor sensitive rebel mind and all of her disappointments and all of her hurts and all of her pains and all of the unfairness. And I think, well, no wonder now my default when I'm not paying attention or I'm tired or whatever, no wonder my default is to land in a state where my guard is just protecting me. It kind of makes sense. But that is not my favorite state to live in. My guard, the feeling of my guard and her energetic signature are really not the way I like to feel. When my guard is present, she's absolutely wanting to protect me. She gets very controlling, and I feel a rigidity in me. I feel a rigidity through my thinking, through my emotions, into my body. It's like all of me becomes rigid, and my guard feels where she thinks the direction of protection is, or, how she wants circumstances to shape up to be good for me. And that's all she sees. And she tries to corral everyone and everything to try to go that way that she thinks will be good for me. It feels really awful. Talk about neck pain. I also get neck pain. And I think it's from her, like, I want things to go this way and I want to figure out how to make these people go this way. And it's very exhausting energy to be in. My guard is literally the opposite of surrender and trust. She doesn't trust, and so she cannot surrender. And I think my guard has shown up in slightly different versions of this type of protection and control over the years. And there's so many differences that I actually think I probably do have multiple versions. Like I could probably name a few different distinct personas. But like you said, the energetic signature throughout all of them is one of, I'm trying to protect you. I'm trying to protect you from what you're scared of. Or she's trying to protect the precious visions that I want to come to life. And she's trying to protect against anything that could get in their way. And she is the version of me who causes the most problems in my life. This morning, before we started recording, I was journaling, and she was the first energy I felt waking up. I woke up, and within minutes, I heard sounds in my house, not like intruders, like the people who live here, but, instantly she jumped into her story of, what she's hearing, and then, what her interpretation is of that. And I could just feel her wanting to get up and control and make everyone do things the way she wants. And woof. Anyway, so when I sat down to journal, she was very, very present. And I was just spending some time with her. And where I eventually landed was just at the place of, wow, like her energy doesn't feel good. I also intuitively know she's causing me to butt up against a wall in the wrong direction. And yet, how beautiful is it that there is a part of me that is forever in my corner? I had so much appreciation for my guard this morning of, wow, you see all the hurts and the disappointments of my rebel mind. You see all my fears. You see all of my hopes and dreams. And there's a part of me that's just relentlessly trying to protect me from everything I fear and trying to propel me towards everything I want. And there is something so beautiful about that. And so my guard is, at the same time, my most beautiful, devoted ally, and probably the biggest troublemaker in my life. I am probably my own obstacle in the form of my guard. I am probably my own biggest obstacle in my life in the pursuit of my visions in the form of my guard trying to meddle and control. And this really conflicted guard state of trying to protect myself and trying to force the reality I want is where I spend most of my minutes of my day, I think, if I'm being really, really honest. There was a point, just like with my rebel mind, where I was a little bit of ashamed of my guard and ashamed of when my guard would come in, because intellectually, I knew and I know I really want to create from the energy of my authentic self. That is my truest self. That's myself that is most connected to my own power, my own wholeness, my own unique frequency that's authentic in me. And I don't love when this part of me, who is my guard, comes in and gets controlling because she doesn't believe in my own power and she tries to force and she doesn't trust. I haven't loved that piece of me. I haven't loved her. And she's the one, when I look back throughout my life and I think about all the moments that I find most cringy and embarrassing or like shameful, I think it's like a lot of moments when my guard took the reins and she was trying to act. She thought she was acting in my best interest and trying to have me portray myself in a certain way, act in a certain way, but that wasn't truly fully me. I think she's the version of me who makes me most embarrassed when I look back, you know? And so I've spent so much time wrestling with her, and I still spend time wrestling with her. But I am learning to do the same thing with her as I've done with my rebel mind in embracing her. She needs to be embraced in a different way than my rebel mind needs to be embraced. She's like a really good signal for me. When I feel her anger, when I feel her control, when I feel her manipulation, here's some things about her. She can be manipulative. She can be angry. She can be opportunistic. She can be controlling. She can be very vengeful, very spiteful, very resentful. Oh my gosh. Instead of feeling ashamed for those qualities, now they're a very important signal. When I feel those, now I know part of me is trying to protect another part of me, and it's a signal to explore, to find, like, what is she protecting? And there's always something so understandable happening inside me, you know? Anyway, that's a lot of conflicting, nuanced energy in relationship to my guard. But I think that's the guard is. The guard can be so many things. And just like the rebel mind, I don't think she's going anywhere. I don't think there's a way to shut out that piece of me, only to learn how to hold her and understand her and what she's trying to do for me.
An interesting question that I've been asked quite a bit is, does the authentic self ever feel anger? Does the authentic self ever feel like anger or even sadness or even grief? Like, does that version of you only feel good emotions? And I think I love that question. I have my own thoughts and experiences of how my authentic self feels these other emotions. I'm curious to hear what you think about that question, Michelle.
Oh, that's such a good question. I think I've heard similar versions of this question over time, and I think I've answered it different ways over the years. But what I think is true for me, at least right now, is my authentic self has a great and vast capacity to feel everything there is. I don't know whether or not in a bubble my authentic self feels the anger or feels the, rage or sadness. But what I do know for sure is my authentic self will fully hold and fully feel all of the emotions of all of my parts. So my rebel mind, my many guards, my authentic self, regardless of where the feelings originate, I know that my authentic self, a key quality in her is the full, complete willingness to not shy away from any feeling and to be the space where all of those feelings can be fully felt and processed. So I don't know the exact answer of like, is it the authentic self's feeling? Is it the guard's feeling? Is the rebel mind's feeling? I don't know. But at the end of the day, my fullest, most authentic self allows all of those emotions to be felt and processed through her.
I've been sitting in that question for years and years and years, just trying to understand for myself, because I think that we're giving people an approach, a model, but it's really up to you to decide how you interpret it and like how you use it. And if pieces work, great. If pieces don't work, adapt it or throw that piece away. It's really up to you to use it however can support you. So I've been really sitting in that question as for my own internal world, because I can only answer from my own internal experience. And what I've found sitting in the depths of emotions over and over and over again, no matter what emotion. For example, if I'm feeling even like a righteous anger, like I have every right to be absolutely furious at this thing that is happening and it's like unjust. It is like infuriating. I have every right to be furious, and there's a part of me that wants to be like, this is my authentic self. I'm taking a stand for myself. But when I really sit with myself and in my emotions and that anger inside, every time it's my guard who's like the most activated, angry one. And when I sit with her and I allow her to go through the 3 steps to alignment, name it, feel it, shift it. And again, that's why I really highly recommend listening to that podcast episode if you haven't, to kind of create a more complete picture of these 2 pieces of the methodology that we're teaching. But if I allow myself to name it, feel it, shift it with my guard, and like I can see that, oh, this anger is my guard. And then she can just like feel her anger and feel her anger. And, and then I'm able to connect a little bit deeper to like what's beneath the anger, and it's my helpless rebel mind who feels like something bad and unjust and unfair did happen to me. And I have been hurt and this is not fair. My guard is feeling so angry at this unjustness or whatever it might be. And so if I allow myself to name those emotions, feel those emotions, and in my own time and way, shift back into alignment through that 3 step to alignment process. And I come back home to my authentic self, and my rebel mind is in one hand and my guard is in the other, but my guard is disarmed. I have to navigate my rebel mind and guard in different ways as well. Like my rebel mind just wants to be loved and nurtured and someone to say, I've got this. It's okay. You can just be a 4-year-old and I've got this. And my guard actively needs to be disarmed. So when I approach my guard, I'll ask her to disarm herself, take off the armor, lay down the sword. There's no need for that here, and so hand in hand with these 2 other parts of me, after I've fully processed and moved through the emotions, it's not like the outer circumstances have changed. I'm still looking, perhaps, at an event that feels unjust, but I'm seeing it from this really grounded place, and I'm still barefoot in the ground, connected. I'm literally going through an experience like this right now, okay, with a bank that has screwed something up in our mortgage that is like, you can't even believe this has happened. I'm absolutely shocked. And this bank owes us money and we've had to escalate it. I've been dealing with this for 9 months. My guard is infuriated. But when I anchor into my authentic self, she's calm. She's not going anywhere. She's not backing down. She's calm. She's collected. She's grounded. She's expressing herself clearly. She's expressing herself fairly. She's got her shoulders back, her head held high, but she's not attacking. She's not pointing fingers. She's not, saying all the things my guard would love to say. So it's a very different energy. So it's not anger, certainly not anger, but it is a feeling of like, I have a strength inside of me as I approach this situation. But to your point, Michelle, it's the authentic self that's holding the container for all of those emotions to be present. So in a way, yes, your authentic self can feel all sorts of emotions, but when you ground back into the full perspective of your authentic self, I do believe that you can find your, whatever that is for you, like whatever your authentic self's energetic signature feels like for you. I think you can find that no matter what. My last experience with deep grief was when I lost my grandmother 5 years ago. My grandmother I was incredibly close with. And I remember the grieving process. My guard was terrified to grieve. She's like, don't feel these emotions because you will get lost in the grief. That is the loss of your grandmother. It was just a gigantic loss in my life. And I was busy. The MRA was like really taking off. We just moved into our new home. I was the breadwinner of our home. I had to hold on to everything. And I remember trying to like sinking into my grief and really wanting to pay attention to where was my authentic self's grief? Like who was grieving? Because this is a human I loved so much. Is it my authentic self grieving? Is it my rebel mind grieving? Like I wanted to kind of unpack that a little bit as I was in the grieving process. And there I found that when I used the 3 steps to alignment, name it, feel it, shift it in my grieving process over and over and over again, when I went to the name it and I went to the deepest place of grief inside of me, my guard didn't even want me to feel it. Like, my God, don't even make space for this because you will get washed away and never come back. You can't run a company in grief, like not even possible. But when I allowed myself, it was my rebel mind who was like, my rebel mind's greatest fear is losing the people I love. It's like fear come true. I've just lost like such an important human in my life. And when I tapped into her fear, it was like, I will never see this human again. I'm getting emotional. Oh my goodness. I'll never touch her again. She's gone. And it was like this loss, as if I was like being severed from the source of love. It wasn't just one name it, feel it, shifted in a moment of grief. But when I came back home to myself in the shift it process, what I was able to always anchor into, even though the sadness was still there, that I miss this human, what I was able to connect back to, which is the truth of my authentic self, which is like I can feel her all around me. I literally feel her next to me all the time. There's like this great big picture of her in my kitchen. She's always staring at us. And when I'm in my authentic self, I can feel that. I can feel the connection to her, and I know I'm going to see her again soon. Like there's no separation, you know? So even though my authentic self can feel the grief, maybe it's more like our authentic selves can hold the container for all the emotions and all of the big emotions. But like the true perspective of the authentic self is a more grounded, whole picture or perspective that you can hold.
You know, everything you're saying rings so true to me too about, you know, I think your internal experience about the grief really belonging to the rebel mind or the anger really belonging to the guard. And yes, the authentic self holds it all so she feels it all, but, you know, the grief, those particular emotions really belonging to the other personas. I think that rings true for me as well. I think that is true of what's happening inside me. But I think for a while, I maybe wanted to believe that some of my intense feelings of anger or righteousness or grief, I think I have wanted to in some moments believe they are the feelings of my authentic self. And I think I've wanted to believe that because it felt like not believing they were the feelings of my authentic self and naming them as, oh, that's my rebel mind's feeling or my guard's feelings. It felt like it in some way maybe invalidated my feeling or didn't make it as real. And I didn't want to do that. It felt like if I said, oh, that's just my rebel mind's grief, that it would somehow invalidate the significance, the meaning, and the certain type of truth and wisdom that all emotions contain. I think where I've landed in that place of my authentic self will hold and feel and honor every feeling of my rebel mind. My authentic self will hold and honor every feeling of my guard. And my authentic self will look at those parts and those feelings and look for the wisdom contained within them. And she will, you know, not shove them aside. I think that stand for my parts lets me see a little more clearly that what you're saying is really fully true, you know? Yeah, when I think of any of the intense emotions my rebel or guard have felt, the part that makes me want to cling to an emotion is the part of me that's scared I'll miss the message. Like, I think there's like a wisdom to knowing feelings are important. The feelings of your personas are important. They have wisdom, they have messages, and you need to be present to them and allowing of them to gather the wisdom, gather the messages. But I think you are right that the energetic signature of the authentic self is always there. The authentic self, the part of you that feels whole and grounded and connected to the fullest type of love, whatever that means to you, is always still there, despite the feelings of the other personas.
So we hope that this episode, this exploration, sharing our personas, how we approach this and what goes on in our internal worlds, we really hope that this supports you. We've also added a tool in the show notes that you can download, and it's journal prompts and reflections to help you get clearer about who is your rebel mind? How does that part of you show up? Guides you through a process of creating a persona for all three, for your rebel mind, for your guard, and for your authentic self. And we hope it serves you. Thanks for tuning into the Mind Rebel podcast. If you're craving a space to go deeper into explorations like these, visit themindrebel.com to learn more about our flagship program, The Mind Rebel Method. Whether you're feeling the call to become a world-class accredited coach, or you're simply yearning to live a life more true to who you really are, this is where your next chapter begins.